This is the Ezra podcast. This weekend we have Canelo Alvarez versus Gennady Golovkin, number 3, in a fight that's, I think some people believe it's beyond the point of when it should have been made. I pretty much, I think everybody's in agreement for that one. Politics got in the way. The weird thing is they were on the same side of the street, but didn't seem like when Canelo was with Golden Boy signed the deal with DAZN. Didn't seem like Canelo was on board of fighting Triple G, which was the fight that DAZN was kind of looking for when they brought him there, right? That was be the fight that was going to bring all the attention to them and generate all this buzz, and they're riding off the great fight in the number 2 versus the Triple G Canelo number 2. They're riding off that buzz, so they thought, okay, we'll have the number 3, the trilogy, and it'll be on DAZN, and people have to go and download the app to find it. And that was Canelo had other plans. Then the whole lawsuit happens with Golden Boy, and they can't find the right opponents for Canelo. And then Triple G says, I'm not fighting anyone for real. I got to deal with you guys. I'll just fight whoever you guys get your hands on, that I'll agree to. And it's kind of like just tune up after tune up after tune up for Triple G. And then Canelo leaves Golden Boy, and then he signs with Matchroom, and then he ends up on DAZN, and he fights, what people are saying that he's the Euro Tour. I think, that's kind of like putting down what he did. But I think he accomplished a lot in that point. I think Triple G hasn't really faced anyone, and the only glimpse we have of seeing if Triple G is still relevant or still has something left was his fight with Murata. I think his fight with Murata was a good test. I think it was probably going to be the best middleweight matchup of the year. So that's saying something about the middleweight division. And I thought Murata was number 5, in my opinion, at the middleweight division. I thought Triple G was number 1. And when he won that fight, he solidified himself spot at number 1 by being the number 5 guy. Now, I did see weaknesses in that fight. I did see openings. I did see him, slowing down in that fight. That's just the truth of it. And I never go on here to diminish a fight. I don't want to diminish a fight. I want to build a fight up. I want to bring excitement. But I have to be honest, too. And I think that the more you know, the more interested you'll be in the fight. I really do. You ever someone go watch a movie and they'll tell you everything they just saw in the movie? They'll be like, oh, you won't believe this movie last night. And then you're like, this happened. And then, they're telling you the whole story. And they'll give you like even the plot twist. And you'll be like, damn, that movie sounds good. I got to go watch it. Even though you know everything. This person ruined everything for you. But the real excitement they have and them telling you all the exciting parts makes you want to see it and capture it yourself, that moment. So I'm hoping that I give you enough information about this fight and just bring awareness really to this fight, because I think that's a lot of times what the promoters don't do. They don't bring awareness. They don't get you involved in the storyline. They try to throw, to me, it's just like big headlines, and I don't know. To me, I'm like, the more entrenched someone is with the storyline, I think that the more they are likely to follow it. That's just my personal opinion. And I think that knowing that Triple G is older, and I do think that there shows signs of slowing down. I think it does make. I think you have to know that going in, first of all, especially if you're not like a diehard fan or you're not a consistent fan of boxing, you're not watching all the time, keeping up with the storylines. You have to know that going in. But you also have to know that this fight's at 168 pounds, and you have to know that the last fight I saw at Triple G was at 160. So him going up in weight, is it going to do anything for him? It might give him a boost, right? Might not have to cut all this weight. He might feel more energetic, might feel stronger, might have a little more power. And Golovkin with a little more power is very dangerous. Now he's fighting Canelo, who's very comfortable at 168, but did move up to 175. Took a beating for it, right? Lost to Bivol, clearly. Now he's coming back down. Now we do have examples of guys going up too far and having to work their way back down. And it's not quite works out the way they think. You got Roy Jones going to heavyweight and coming back down to fight Tarver. This happens, right? With fighters towards the end of their career, usually it happens where guys go up in weight and trying to find something. And then suddenly they're like, oh, they lose back, so I'm going to come back down. And then they come back down the same guy. So there is that thing for Canelo. Also versus Canelo versus Bivol, just kind of looked flat. Like really flat. Didn't look like he didn't have anything behind his shots. To me, I think personally that's because that weight was too big for him. But maybe it was a little bit signs of Canelo slipping, right? Or maybe it was just Canelo facing elite competition that he hasn't faced in a while. And maybe this Euro Tour was guys that weren't at that level, so he got to shine against lesser competition. Now, what Golovkin did show the Murata fight, he did show that when he does work through it, and as he's getting older, it's going to take a few rounds to get warmed up. But when he does get warmed up, he can still box. He's still very smart. He's still very good at placing his shots. The power's still there. He can still break you down. He still has all that. Now, I think it takes a few rounds to get started up, and I think that fighting Canelo, taking a few rounds to start up, who Canelo is kind of cautious to start off a fight, usually likes to take his time to get started, right? Find his rhythm, find where he's going to place his shots. That might benefit Triple G. So I'm curious if Canelo comes out fast in this fight, comes out like Murata came out and looks to put it on him, because you have to say, you would have to think that he saw Murata do that and have to think, well, I'm better than Murata. And if Murata's landing on Triple G early like this, if I put pressure on Triple G, I'm going to land way cleaner, way faster shots, way cleaner shots, and I think more power, especially 168 pounds. So this is a chance that Canelo just jumps right on Triple G early in this fight and tries to get him to the body and tries to wear him down, because you do see signs of Triple G getting wear down to the body. Now, if you go back to the second fight with Canelo and Triple G, and some people think it's controversial, some people think that Triple G won that fight, some people think it's robbery. Now, if you go and look at Broadway Joe's YouTube page, we did an official score of the Triple G Canelo fight, number 2. And it wasn't a robbery. It wasn't. You can clear this. It was a close fight, but I thought it was clearly a Canelo fight. Now, I think that a lot of times you get swayed by what your personal opinion is of Canelo, or what way you want the fight to go, or maybe a guy outperforms what you expect, so you start scoring rounds for him. All these things can happen. Sometimes you're just not paying attention, you're just watching a fight, not really scoring, and you just feel like a guy won. But when you score, then you get a different story. I don't think that was a robbery at all. I think it was a close fight, and Canelo won it. But there were things that Triple G did in it that were very good, and especially the second half of the fight. He starts moving around and he starts boxing, right? He starts jabbing, staying behind the jab, moving around, making Canelo come to him, walking Canelo into shots, getting better defensively. Now, it reminded me a little bit of Andre Ward Kovalev number 1. In the second half of that fight, you had seen that Andre Ward had figured out Kovalev. And going into the second fight, at least in my mind, I thought, well, Andre Ward's going to run through him because he already figured him out in the last fight. It's going to be a continuation of what he figured out. And Andre Ward's so very smart that if he figures it out, then he's going to remember it and he's going to apply all that, his whole training camp, to what he figured out, and then he'll apply it to the rematch. I knew that was going to happen. I knew he was going to beat Kovalev in the rematch. Now, Triple G, I thought, figured out something in the number 2 fight, in the second half of it. I thought he figured something out. I thought he had figured out a little bit of the distance. He had figured out that he could box Canelo. He had figured out his space, his timing. I thought he had figured some stuff out. Now, can he continue that right away in the number 3 fight? Everything he learned, can he apply that right away? Or is it going to be like the Murata fight? Or is it going to be like Canelo fight number 2, honestly, where it takes him a few rounds to get started? It takes him a few rounds to get going again, and he can't keep that going. He has to feel it in the ring, right? And now that he's a little bit older, he's got to get started and get warmed up. A lot of people assume that older fighters are better early and worse late, and that's not necessarily the case. And I actually think the case would be, there's way more proof to show that older fighters are better late in fights. We look at Brown Hawkins versus Jermaine Taylor. Whereas he'll be better in that fight later. If you look at Brown Hawkins in basically every fight after Jermaine Taylor, he's better later in the fight. Actually, a lot of times he's trying to set you up to go later rounds. So is Golovkin going to have to take that time to get started? How much damage is he going to take from that point? That when he gets started, is he going to be able to really get going, or is it just going to be too much damage added up to that point? Another thing in the second fight was Triple G got a lot of work done when Canelo would take breaks and he would have dips in energy. Now, Canelo would have quite a few dips in energy in that fight. When Canelo's going, though, and he's throwing punches and bunches, Triple G really couldn't do anything. And I thought Canelo was just teeing off on him. And Canelo was countering very well in that fight as well. Because when his aggression was forcing Triple G to react, and then he would counter off of that. So when Canelo was had good stamina and he had good energy in a round, he would dominate the round. He'd win the round clearly. It was the dips in energy, the dips in cardio and stamina that allowed Triple G to get rounds and start working his game. And in the second half of the fight, you kind of see Canelo slow down, and that allowed Triple G to gain a few rounds in that fight. Now, I think Canelo finishes strong, but that could also be a sign of why Triple G has success in the fight. Because he did get better defensively, too. I noticed in the Murata fight, he gets better defensively second half of the fight. In the Canelo fight, he got better defensively, and he starts moving his head, he starts getting out of distance. I don't think Triple G is going to be able to start like that. I think it's going to be a lot more like what we saw versus Murata. And I think Canelo's going to jump on him. And I think Canelo's going to look to bury him to the body. And I think that Canelo's going to know that he's going to have to take a few rounds to get going. And if we jump on him early, we might be able to get him out of there, especially if he looks how he looked during the Murata fight in the third, fourth round, where it just looks like he's about to break. Honestly, that's what I took from it. Now, in the Murata fight, he found out that if I could just move this guy, turn him, it takes him a long time to set up. And then when he does get set up, right, Golovkin started throwing the jab, so then he would get stuck, right? Murata couldn't punch in between. He got stuck, and then he would have to reset, and that allowed Triple G, when he got him stuck, he would be able to combo off him. Then Triple G started throwing the right hand, but starting to throw it softly, just touching him out like a jab, and that would get Murata stuck. Now, those two moves right there, the jab is going to be very important for Golovkin. He's going to have to jab in this fight. He's going to have to control Canelo. Now, Canelo, the way his defense works is a lot of upper body movement. So if you can't jab him consistently, he kind of gets stuck in that position, and he will come up short with his counters. Like Triple G did the Murata fight, the straight right hand, where he doesn't have a lot on it. He just kind of throws it out there with length, and if he could force Canelo to get stuck in positions and force Canelo to have to counter and look to react from too far away, then he could walk him into stuff. But if he can't do that, right, and Canelo just puts it on him early, and Triple G is going to look to ride that out until he can get started, I think that's going to be too much damage from that point. I think that Triple G is going to take too much damage early in this fight. I think Canelo's going to get to him and get to the body. I think Canelo's going to control this fight early on with a jab. He's going to jab his way in. He's going to get to the body. He's going to look to push the pace on Golovkin. And I think that Golovkin's going to look to trade, but it's going to be a faster pace than he wants early. And he's not going to be warmed up early. And I think it's not going to be as sharp. And I think he's going to take a lot of shots. I think the shots will start to add up 3, 4th, 5th round. I think the Canelo starts dropping Golovkin. I think he breaks him to the body. And I think once you see Golovkin no longer able to hold up on that, I think it's just all going to start crumbling from that point. I'm going to take Canelo in a 5th round stoppage in this fight. I think that the shots are going to add up early. I think the damage is going to add up early. And I know that they want Triple G to box, but I don't think he's going to be able to do that until he gets warmed up and finds his distance and finds his timing. And his defense is a lot poorer early in a fight than it is later in a fight. And I don't think he's going to be able to keep his offense consistently going to keep Canelo off of him. Now, I think the first 2 rounds could be very interesting in this fight, but I just don't think you're going to see a sharp Triple G early. I think it takes time for him to get in, and if Canelo's gets going quick, which is not really Canelo's forte, but if he does get going quick, and if you remember in the Bivol fight, he did try to do that early, so it's not like he didn't kind of prepare for that in the last fight that he doesn't do in this fight. I'm going to pick Canelo in a 5th round stoppage. I think the body shots are really going to add up, and I understand that Golovkin, no one stopped Golovkin. No one's even heard Golovkin like that since Derevyanchenko, but there were signs always there that he's just kind of not being able to take the punches like before. And maybe that's because he can't get his shots off like before. So guys are able to a little bit tee off more than they were before. I think Canelo's going to really control this fight. I think he's going to look pretty dominant. I think the comeback to 168, he's going to kind of show everyone that he's back at 168 pounds. Now, if Golovkin can survive the onslaught early, or if Canelo makes a mistake and lets Golovkin catch his rhythm, the second half of this fight, Golovkin's going to have success. Yes. Now, I don't know if he could win this fight because I don't think he's going to win enough early rounds. And I think that even if he has success in the second half of the fight, I still think there'll be back and forth rounds to it. But if Golovkin starts getting on his legs and he starts moving and turning Canelo and jabbing and being able to jab consistently and find his timing and find his defense, right? Defensive range. I think he gets a pretty interesting fight in the second half. Maybe even a pretty competitive fight. I don't think this fight's going to be competitive on the scorecards, though. I think that Canelo's going to win enough for the early first half and then split the second half with Triple G if that's the way it goes. But you're going to have to really see Triple G survive a lot of damage in this fight. Now, I was noticing that Triple G's was a lot more muscular in the Murata fight. Now, I'm not suggesting anything like that because I don't know, right? I don't know. It could be like someone suggested he got a nutritionist. They never had one before. He got it for this. He did. He just looked more muscular in that fight. He looked stronger. Just, I'm saying, like physically, like from just like the eye test of looking at him, right? And I was thinking about when Marquez in his last fight with Pacquiao, he had a tune-up fight, and it wasn't like he knocked that guy out cold. He won the fight, but it was like, I don't think anyone watched that fight and was like, "Oh, I built all this confidence that he's going to beat Pacquiao now." I don't think anyone saw that, and I actually won in that fight and thought, "Oh, Pacquiao's going to run through this guy. Look, he just went 12 with this guy, and this guy, who is he, right?" But Marquez goes and knocks out Pacquiao that fight. And if you remember anything about Marquez, he gets really big and muscular for that fight, very strong. And I just brought similarities to me the Golovkin versus Murata. And Murata is a little better than I think people are maybe even familiar with him, or people that are familiar will give him credit for, but I think he's a little bit better than that. And I see the Triple G's and his body is, like I said, more muscular, so he's tip top shape. He's trying to add strength as he goes to 168 pounds. And just similarities of that with Marquez versus Pacquiao and Golovkin versus Canelo in the third one. When it was Marquez versus Pacquiao, I think it was the fourth one. And, sometimes the guys are so good, like a Golovkin, especially like what I thought Marquez and Pacquiao was that Pacquiao just gave Marquez way too many looks. And it was one of those things like if you fight 100, these guys are so good, but if you fight them 100 times, right? Like maybe Pacquiao does win 70 of them, but Marquez is so good that he's going to win 30 of them. You know what I mean? Golovkin's very good. And him seeing you more and more, I think he's going to learn more about you and be able to use things against you, right? And catch flaws and get more comfortable in the ring with you. Now he's getting older, like I said, and that's mostly why I'm leaning Canelo very big in the fight. But let's just say that he looks sharper in this fight. He has a good energy and he doesn't look old. Is he seeing enough of Canelo where he's like, I know his mistakes now. I know where I could catch him. What I saw in the second half fight, I know I could continue that. I know what he's going to walk into. And what if he lands something big and puts Canelo out? And at 40 years old, Triple G gets the biggest win of this rivalry with a knockout. What does that do for Triple G in his career? I mean, he could walk off to the sunset with that, but I think that there's be too much money fights calling for him, and I believe that he's a free agent after this fight. That's just I remember one of the rumors I heard that he can go anywhere. And you would have to think that he would start listening to a Charlo fight or a Munguia fight, which, I mean, honestly would probably be a lot of money and more winnable fight for him. But he would also have the possibility of Charlo, which I think there would be a lot of money if he just gets off beating Canelo and then goes and fights Charlo. He could also fight Canelo for number 4. I think the money would be too much for Triple G just to walk away. I think that if he does win, I think every fight would be tough from that point on out because you would just have to cash out the paydays and he's too old to be doing like tune-ups and all that, risking it and stay busy fights. But I believe that's the direction it would go. He would be the champ at 168. He could go fight Charlo, Munguia, and get another payday. And it's not like if he beats Canelo, right? It's not out of the realm that he could beat Charlo. It's definitely not out of the realm. I think I would pick him against Munguia right now. And he could just kind of continue this rolling a little bit, and even in his 40s, right? And the one thing that doesn't go is the power. And he's got technical ability that maybe could carry it and age his game a little better. So that would be, stunning, of course, but it'd be very interesting and probably it's not bad for boxing. if Canelo were to lose a Triple G. That's just the truth. I mean, a fight with Charlo would be huge. A fight with Munguia would be huge. Now, if Canelo wins how I expect him to win, then he's gonna have a tough choice ahead of him, right? He would have the third fight with Matchroom. I believe it's an option, but maybe I don't know. He's locked in. Who knows? And he could fight Bivol in a rematch. In a match, I don't think he has any chance of winning. For you to believe that he could win that fight, you would have to believe that he was like food sick going into the last one or something like that, because he didn't have any juice. And I think it was because the weight. And I think that not just the weight, but also the skill of Bivol. And if you're going to fight a guy like Bivol, you kind of want to at least be on the level playing field as far as weight, and your power is going to matter, especially because Canelo kind of needs his power to matter. I just don't think he could beat Bivol. So I think going to fight Bivol after beating Triple G would really just kill momentum again. And I just don't think that's a good idea. I think if you don't have the next fight with Matchroom, go fight Charlo, go fight Benavidez, solidify, because he's already the king at 168. But if these are the challengers, go and beat those challengers, which are mega fights. I think they're very huge, especially with Showtime behind it, with the PBC behind it. And then you see where you go from there, and you just let everything else play out from there. But I think that's the direction you go. I don't think the Bivol fight's a good idea. I just don't think he can win. I don't think he can win that. I can't see how he wins that. I honestly think if he won and did win that, it'd be one of the most amazing things I've seen in boxing, honestly, because it just does not seem possible. I watched that fight a few times now, and I just don't see an opening where it's like, yeah, this is what Canelo can do to win this fight. He's always going to come up short, in my opinion. It could get worse. I don't think it could get better. I think it could get worse. On the undercard of this fight, we have Jesse Bam Rodriguez versus Israel Gonzalez. Bam Rodriguez is, the next big thing in boxing. It feels like he's a star. I think the diehards all about him. He's in the lower weight, so it's like we don't know if the casuals are going to catch on to him. But if anyone's the casuals going to catch on to in the lower weight classes, Bam Rodriguez is it. He's entertaining to watch. He has a very charismatic style in the ring. Beautiful leg movements, beautiful angles, offensive, constantly doing something. You can't be bored watching him. You really can't. Fighting Israel Gonzalez, who was he's been in tough with everyone, but has not been able to get over the hump. So, lose all the good guys, you're probably never going to be at that level. You know what I mean? If you were at that level, you probably would have pulled off one of these wins. But he's only been stopped once, and that was in I believe, the 10th round versus Ancayas. But he won the distance with Chocolatito, and I think he's a very interesting fighter. I think he's a good fighter. I don't think he's at Bam's level, but what I'm curious is, Bam at 115 pounds, can he consistently stop fighters? And a guy like Israel Gonzalez, who isn't a guy that's only been stopped once, but has fought a lot of tough guys. And he has a style where, depending on which one he chooses to do, because he can move around the ring and walk you into stuff, and then he can also, look to exchange with you and trade with you shots and combinations. And he's not the most pinpoint with the shots, and he doesn't. His shots come from kind of weird angles, and sometimes his legs are, he's good movement, but sometimes like he's not punching in between movement. Basically, he moves sets and lets you walk into a space where he's able to throw combos off of you. Now, if in this fight he chooses to box a little bit, and that's a strategy I would think to go about with Bam, and make Bam move, make Bam use his angles, and make Bam. You got to remember one thing about Bam's style is it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of effort to be moving and switching and popping in different spots and bending. It's a lot of leg movement. And when you use your legs that much, especially like the explosive moves he has, you're going to burn out, right? You're going to get tired. It just is. You're going to have dipping energy. Especially also another important thing, and this is the same problem Lomachenko has, who has kind of a similar style to Bam, is you're always in range, right? They believe in their legs so much, and their the ability to circle you and give you angles that they could be out of range, but they're still in punching range, right? They may not be right in front of you, but you're still in punching range. So you're going to get hit. It's hard to fight the perfect fight when you're constantly in punching range. Now, we've seen Bam almost fight the perfect fight against Rumvasai. I thought it was about as great of a performance you could have. And I said that's how that fight was going to look. Because Rumvasai was not going to be able to keep all those angles. And if Bam was stood discipline and didn't go too much into flurries, he wouldn't get caught in between the shots. That's what he did. But in this fight, Israel's a little bit faster. He's a little bit better with his legs, and he's not gonna second guess his combinations. He's not slow. He's not looking to land the perfect shot. He's gonna let his stuff go. And if he's able to move around, and Bam's gonna have to follow him and be careful what's coming back to him. And not like Israel Gonzalez has power or anything like that, but he just is a good fighter with it's always threatening you with something. I think that Bam's going to win this fight. I think he'll win it clearly. I think he will get a stoppage, but later in the fight. I think this fight's going to go rounds, and I think that he might finally break down Israel like in the 10th round, where Israel just kind of gets to a point where he starts trading, and Bam's able to kind of sit on his stuff a little bit more at his combinations. I think the straight left's going to be very important for him because I've seen Israel get dropped by Ankayas. I think that'll be the shot in this fight. But I think it's going to take some effort from Bam. I don't think Bam's going to be able to just run through him. If he does, that'd be very impressive. And it'll kind of just, keep building the legend of Bam Rodriguez. But I think this fight goes rounds. I'm going to take Bam 10th round stoppage in this fight. Next fight I want to talk about is Austin Williams, Ammo Williams versus Kieran Conway. And I think is a damn good fight, especially for Ammo. I think Ammo is slowly working his way up in the middleweight division. You got to remember one thing is he came to boxing late. He came to boxing at 18 years old. And a lot of the guys that come up in boxing have been fighting since they were kids, right? They've been boxing since they were kids and have the technique and know the tricks and have all the experience of sparring and the amateurs. And you got to think that Ammo Williams is fighting since 18 years old. He's 26. 8 years, and he's already getting to a top level of boxing. It's amazing, and that's because of natural ability. He has natural ability and comfort in the ring and timing. A lot of times if you have natural timing and you understand your spacing, right, you can skip a lot of steps with just that. Because a lot of guys have been trained their whole life and can't figure that out. Ammo Williams has that figured out. Now, so he's rougher on the edges. He is, and he doesn't have, he makes mistakes. Sometimes he's a little clunky with his movement. He doesn't look the smoothest, but he has power, he has speed, and like I said, the timing, balance makes him a very, very scary fighter. Now, Kieran Conway, I think when he got to a certain level, fought mostly at 154 pounds. His last fight, oddly enough, was at super middleweight, 167 pounds. But now he's coming to 160 and in a very tough fight because I don't think Conway has any really physical gifts, right, to make him stand out. I think his style is very basic. I think he's real tall, fights tall, doesn't have a lot of upper body movement, and kind of just fights on his technique, right? He found a technique that works for him, and he's just going to apply that. But he doesn't have really any creativity and nothing that just separates him from the pack. Now, he has a lot of experience. He's fought at a decent level already. And I think that he's going to offer a good challenge for Ammo. But I think if Ammo is who I think he could be, and whose ability, what ability allows him to do, a guy like Kieran Conway is just too basic for him to not land big shots. And I know that Conway does make a mistake where he drops his lead hand. I think Ammo's going to be able to take advantage of that. I'm going to take Ammo in this fight. I think it's going to go a few rounds. I think Conway's experienced enough. He's tough enough. He's skilled enough to go a few rounds. I'll take Bam by stoppage in this fight, but maybe, 5th or 6th round. I think it's taking him a little time. Now, if he runs through Conway like nothing, right, and it's just completely one-sided, you have to start getting excited by Ammo Williams. Because just, like I said, explaining everything about his raw ability, but if he's just running through these guys that are, experienced fighters with good level competition, and he's running through them not like anyone's done before, you got to just say, like, hey, this guy has something, and we got to pay attention to it, especially in the middleweight division where there's really no one. If you got to insert talent like Austin Williams to it, it's going to get very interesting. And I think that he could do that, and we could see a really special performance from him this weekend. Once again, thank you guys for listening. Oh, no. I'm going too soon. I went too soon. We're doing a new segment here. I used to do a thing called $1 million bets. Got $1 million. I was going to bet it for a year and then see where I got to. And I was getting to 2 million, right? And this is all fake money. And I was getting to $2 million in bets. I was going to, like, as far as that's where I turned my million to another million, basically. And then I lost it all because I put the bet on, I was doing like high odds. Like I'm talking about minus 3,000 type things, right? It was supposed to be like sure money. And then one of those guys lost and it cost me all my fake money. So now I'm going to introduce this again, but these are just going to be fights that I covered on this podcast. As far as the Austin Williams fight versus Kieran Conway, I have Austin Williams by stoppage. That's minus 152. $100 will win you 65.79. I'm also going to take Bam over 8.5 rounds. These are even odds. So 100 will get you 100. You bet 100, you're going to get 100 back. That's on top of the 100 you bet. Sometimes people don't understand that. I don't understand. If I bet 100 on that, it's even odds. When they pay me back, they're going to give me 200 if I win. They give me the 100 I bet and then 100 on top of that, just in case that confuses you. I'm going to take Canelo to win $100 just to win. It's minus 600 odds, so you win $16, 1667. I think sometimes you just got to take a sure thing. And I'm also going to take Canelo under 7.5 rounds, so at plus 325, and I'm just going to bet 20 on that. That equals $65. Now, a parlay that I like is Ammo, Bam, Canelo at minus 205. 100 wins 48.81. That's 420 betting total. Okay, I don't know what the mic turned off real quick. I said the parlay was Ammo, Bam, Canelo at minus 205, 100 to win 48.81. That's 420 betting total to win 296.37. Now, I'm not a betting person because I feel like I'll win one of these dumb bets and then go get super greedy with it. But I understand the 420 to win 296 isn't the most attractive thing, right? You want to win big money. I'm just going to bet on what I cover and what I feel comfortable telling you that these I feel confident in these numbers. You can go parlay a whole damn card and bet, put $10 and win 1,000. I've seen it done. But I'm trying to get at least something that I feel confident in to you guys. So those are my bets for the week. This has been the Ezra podcast. Thank you guys for listening.